It's the 26th of August, and guess what today is? I already saw in my audiobook app that they have the audiobook for Katabasis out. It's 18 hours and 33 minutes long, I think, and I still have 6 hours left from this month and 20 hours left. Well, I will get 20 hours next month in September. So yeah, I can start it right away, and I'm really excited. I'm not sure how I will go about this, but I think I will enjoy it a lot, and I'm really in the mood for what this book promises. So join me on this journey while I read the new release by R.F. Kuang. Oh, Lord. I've decided I'm going to start the audiobook tonight when I'm actually going to a silent book club for the first time. So I volunteer at this local neighborhood initiative, and a friend of mine came up with the idea, and I said I would help bring this about. So a silent book club is basically where you get together, you talk about the book you brought to the occasion for half an hour, each person explaining what they're reading and why they're interested in it. Then you have 1 hour of silent reading time, and then afterwards you have the option to just continue reading until we close the session out, or talk about the book and what you read so far, maybe give inspiration to other people and receive it, new recommendations, and it's just an occasion to have time to read, dedicated time to read, but not on your own, but in company. At the same time, you don't have to read the same book until a certain date and then talk about it. You can talk about what you're reading, or you can decide not to. So it's very open and sociable. And my first book I'm going to be reading is probably going to be Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. So I'm going to start the audiobook tonight when we're hosting the silent book club. I was just having dinner before I'm going to head out, and I started the audiobook for Katabasis just now. And the thing is, with dark academia, I work in science or in academia, and most of the things that dark academia describes as being part of the everyday activities of scientists, they are true, but also most of the time they are set in a more historic setting where there is no laptops or computers or any kind of higher technological things you could use for your research. And I think that always makes it so nostalgic. The same with Harry Potter, right? They write with a quill. They don't have, any sort of laptops or phones, anything to do their research with, except for the library, where they have to go and physically lend a book or read a book there, write down things on their papyrus paper, and that's the way they learn and work and hand in assignments. But in today's world, it's not that romantic anymore, because all you do all day is sit at your computer desk, you read papers in, digital journals. So there's no physical, or there's nothing to touch anymore. Of course, you go to the library, you can also rent books, monographs and things like that, but that you do quite seldomly. It's not the standard thing, because most of the literature you would use is digitalized nowadays, and hopefully open access, because that just makes it fair. And so you're not dependent on your library, your physical library, having all of these books on stacks. You don't have to wait for them to be returned to the library if they are rented out so that you can read them. So all of these acts are becoming obsolete, have been made obsolete, and it's much more fast-paced, like everything in the modern world. So whenever I read these kinds of books, I become very nostalgic for that kind of research way of doing research. Although, of course, at the same time, for topics like history or the study of classical literature or anything like that, people do, go into physical archives and they, work with physical manuscripts and things like that. So that is still happening, but for the most part, lots of things have been digitalized, so it's not necessary to do the physical work, and it's becoming, yes, quite unromantic. And on the one hand, I feel nostalgic when I listen to this audiobook describing all of the things that I've just described. At the same time, it's also less efficient, of course. You get less done in the time that you have available. But at the same time, maybe it also helps you retain more knowledge. I'm not sure. Oftentimes when I write down things physically, it helps me retain information better than just typing them on my computer. So yeah, those kinds of thoughts are what I'm thinking about while listening to this audiobook, or while listening to Dark Academia in general, I think. Anything said at a university concerning degrees or scientific work in general. And yeah, I have to say it's not as romantic as it is made out in these books, unfortunately. Today is day 2, and I'm now 3.5 hours into the 18-hour audiobook of Katabasis. I started yesterday on the way to my silent book club, and then I continued listening to it throughout the event this morning, and now on my way home. And I figured that if I read 2 hours or listen to 2 hours a day, then I will, it'll take me 9 days. So this video probably won't be up a long while after the book was published. But anyways, I think I have mixed feelings. On the whole, I'm enjoying the book and also the audiobook experience. It is a much lighter than other works by R.F. Kuang. So compared with Babel, which is set in Oxford, it's a much lighter topic, even though the main characters are going to hell and there's lots of philosophical discussions about death and what it means to be reborn, and topics such as that. But still, at least as for now, what has happened is the stakes aren't that high. At least I don't feel like that. So I think R.F. Kuang wanted to publish something a bit lighter, more fun, and very adventure-based. You are thrown right into the action, so there's not much of a pre-story. You pretty much get to know the characters and their relationships and motivations while they are on the go, on the run, and you are walked through these different levels of hell. So there's a clear structure within the book, as far as I can tell now. And I'm interested to continue reading. I think the lightheartedness so far is, something that I can get into. I'm not too, worried about it, or I don't want anything different than what the book can offer so far. I'm enjoying the philosophical conversations and learning more about, different literature that I have not known about. And it also really inspires me to get back into this dark academia-esque way of going about life. So today, while I was at work, I did a study with me video, or I watched a study with me video with a dark academia setting, and it helped me concentrate a lot. So I guess this moves me right along into autumn, even though today it's really warm again. But I can just ignore the fact that the weather isn't really autumnal just now, and yeah, make it about my own mindset. So let's see when I will give you the next update. I'm looking forward to listening to this book. And I'm interested to see what everyone else thinks about this new and a bit different book by R.F. Kuang. Well, that was a fail. It's the 28th of August and I've just now reached my audiobook limit on my app. So I had 6 hours left, which I specifically wanted to use to listen to Katabasis, which I did. But I didn't realize that, of course, my limit would only then renew at the start of the next month. So I think on the 2nd of September, which is next Tuesday, or maybe even on the 3rd. So now I have like 5 days or something left where I have to wait until I can continue the audiobook. And I actually have lots of free time on the weekend, so I wanted to finish it. But now, well, I will just wait and continue at the beginning of September when I have 20 hours to listen to this audiobook, which I won't be needing then. I think I'm 6 hours in, which is a third. Yes, I'm 33% into the audiobook. Anyway, my thoughts so far. I think it's a bit hard on R.F. Kuang as an author, but I really find myself comparing this constantly to Babel because it is set in a university town in Britain. It's not Oxford, but it's Cambridge, and it's dark academia. As I've already mentioned, it's lighthearted. So I am kind of attracted to the fact that it's more lighthearted and fun, and still there are some interesting philosophical discussions on like death and the, afterlife and hell, which is all very informative. But at the same time, I sometimes feel like I could do with more depth. For example, the magic system in this book works with not charcoal. Oh my god, with I can't for the life of me remember what it's called in English. I think it's called chalk. The thing you write with on a blackboard, I guess. Anyway, they draw like symbols on the ground or on any kind of surface, and then that somehow is one part of how the magic works. And in one part of the book, they were talking about the different kinds of chalk that there are, and where they come from, and the qualities that they have, and which one is supposed to be superior than the other, and things like that. So these are quarried at different places in the UK, and things like that is what they were talking about. And at that point, I know that in Babel, they would have probably talked about who works at these quarries, who has oversight over them, where is it coming from, who can use this chalk. So they would have talked about this extractivism practices of resource use. And I think that was what intrigued me, one of the many things that intrigued me about Babel, were these kinds of discussions. And I know this is supposed to be more lighthearted, but at the same time, they also they are highly intelligent people, and it's supposed to be, the top people of the world going to university and things like that. So I would expect them to kind of also reflect on that. This was not a direct conversation between the characters. It was just more of a storytelling moment, but still, those are the points where I'm like, I think I would have liked it more if there was more depth to it. One more thing that I also thought about today was when you have these highly intelligent characters and then they find a new fact that brings, sheds light on a situation. This character in this book interprets it in this as if there were only one possible option why this happened or why this is the case, why a certain person is behaving the way they are. as if there were multiple options. And at the same time, throughout the book, they talk about how you have to come up with multiple, solutions for the same problem. You can't be too sure with the conclusions that you get to because you could be false, and things like that. So you try to have multiple possible correct answers. But then when it comes to human interactions, suddenly they're like, oh, this happened and that means that. And then there's this one solution that they are so sure about, and they, start spiraling because of their assumption, basically, but they don't see it as an assumption, even though they were very clear from the beginning that, working with assumptions is always, it can always change in the end if you have new information. So you have to stay open and be able to reinterpret the information that you know for now. So that kind of irritates me, and it doesn't really make much sense to me. But other than that, I really enjoy listening to this audiobook. I think the action is okay. It's a good amount. It's not too exhilarating so far. As I said, the stakes aren't too high for now because it's still very lighthearted. And we've learned more about the background of the characters and the history they have with each other, and also with the person they are looking for in hell, which was also interesting. And then yesterday I listened to one part of the story where the main character was like, tried to be vulnerable, but at the same time she was like, if I open myself up, there's no way the other person could help me. So they would just, tell me, oh, poor you, and show sympathy, but then that's it. So sharing doesn't really make any sense, because I don't want people to just pity me and they can't help me with the situation I'm in. So I'd rather not share at all. And I thought that was really profound, and I recognized myself in that. And I think that many people at some point in their life think that way. But I was just like, I wanted to tell the character, even if it's supposedly true that the other person cannot help you with this direct situation you are sharing, simply from my experience, simply the act of sharing and of experiencing that someone is listening to you and being there for you, even if there's nothing they can directly do to help, even that small act of just being there for someone and listening to them helps you who are sharing in understanding what you're going through, working through it internally. So yeah, if you ever feel that way, then I would encourage you to still try and open up, even though before you've shared, it's you're thinking they can't help me anyway. But maybe you'll be surprised. Maybe they haven't shared parts of themselves as well, and if you open up, then they will maybe tell you that they've experienced similar things and you just didn't know about it. So you can't know before you try. So I hope you can find people that you can open up to. Yeah, so far from my review now, and then I guess I will see you next week. I have finally resumed listening to the audiobook for Katabasis. It's now the 3rd of September, so I think it's been 5 days or something like that since I stopped listening to it, and now I'm halfway through. I actually continued reading the physical book in my local bookshop on Friday afternoon, I think. So I skipped a chapter in the audiobook because I had read it in physical form. Sorry if my voice is a bit off. I'm not sure what I think of this actually. I'm not loving it as much as I anticipated. And now that I've stopped listening to it for a while, getting back into into it is hard, and I also feel like I'm not really invested in the story. I don't really care about the characters anymore. Maybe I forgot some of the character development parts, or also the motivation for some of the things they do, or their view of the world, but I just can't really feel any kind of interest in what will happen to them. And of course this is a, I would say, quest-based story, so they happen to, you know, come upon quests or things they have to overcome during their travel throughout hell, and they meet people and things like that. But I just really don't care anymore, and I'm really sorry. I actually had high expectations for this one. What I'm also getting a bit frustrated by, and I think that's just me, is that all of these dark academia, these typical dark academia themes of like, I don't know, the main character just wanting power for, you know, wanting power, and I don't know, having strange motivations. I can't really describe it well right now, but maybe that's also because I stopped listening to it and I forgot what the motivations were. Maybe they discussed this, but I forgot, and so now I can't really understand why they're acting the way they're acting. But yeah, I'm kind of pushing through, but at the moment, I don't know, I wouldn't be sad if it were to end right now. But maybe it'll get better, I don't know. I don't want to stop listening to it, although I'm really in the mood to start up Belladonna, which is on my September TBR, and I just saw that they have the audiobook for this as well on my audio app. But yeah, maybe I will finish up Katabasis this weekend and then start Belladonna as my second audiobook this month, and then my 20 hours will also be used up. Maybe I'll hopefully continue with Katabasis. If I'm learning only one thing from the experience of reading Katabasis, then it's definitely that you should be able to account for your sins and the wrongdoings you have done throughout your life. Introspection, reflection on how you hurt other people and what you've done wrong, how you could do better and change. I think that is one of my key takeaways from listening to this audiobook. Even if you don't believe in the principle of hell, I think it's important for the lifetime you live on Earth. I think that is one of the main messages of this book. I'm almost done. I'm now at 96% of the audiobook, so I have 20 minutes left, and I'm at the very end, at the very climactic ending. And I think what I'm going to say next is probably a spoiler, so if you don't want to be spoiled, then skip now. I will put a link to when you can come back to the video without, when the spoiler is over. At the end of the book, she meets with her advisor again, the person she went to hell she went to hell for, in order to bring him back, in order to finish her thesis under his supervision, so to say. And she meets him again, and she realizes, of course, this is a very traditional storyline, that he's not as great as she once thought, and that he's actually not a good role model, no one to live up to, or look up to, no one to guide her. And she has this big realization now, after everyone told her in hell. Everyone who met him as well was like, why do you think he's a demigod when actually he's not a good person, to say the least. And the thing is that she says, the main character says, if he were infallible or had greatness or was a genius, then I would still follow him and trust him and do his bidding. But he is not infallible. He's not superhuman like I thought he was, or a genius. So he does not deserve my following him. And I was like, that is your takeaway message, girl? The takeaway message is not that you can follow someone blindly if they are geniuses. The takeaway message should be that there are no geniuses, that everyone is fallible, that you can't follow someone blindly. You should always question their actions, their motives, and just realize as you grow older the fact that everyone, even or especially adults, fail without them knowing, sometimes without them wanting to, sometimes just because life is rough, and because people do not do the things that I mentioned in the beginning, because they don't self-reflect, they don't understand how their actions impact other people. So I don't understand how this can be the takeaway message, that she would still follow someone blindly. The only difference is the fact that the person that she would follow is supposed to be better than the one she followed all along. That can't be the takeaway message here. The takeaway message is that you shouldn't follow someone blindly, no matter who they are, if they're a genius or a prodigy in their field or whatever. You should always take these kinds of things with a grain of salt, and always think for yourself and understand that you can take like good lessons or parts of other people's lives and what they have accomplished. Of course you can, but you can't just, think that everything this person does is perfect, and that you just don't need to question them at all. I'm somehow a bit confused as to how this can be the takeaway message. Maybe this will change during the next 20 minutes, but if it doesn't, then yeah, I'm not impressed. It's done. I'm through with the audiobook. I finished it last night when I was walking back from buying some groceries. I gave you my impression yesterday at the park, and it hasn't changed much. I told you about this one thing that really irked me, that the takeaway message was kind of construed from my perspective. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but I don't think the choices that R.F. Kuang made for the ending were exciting. I think it was bland, and like any other story you have read before, I had ideas myself how I would have let it end differently, and that happens very seldom. I don't often think, how would I have written it, or what would I have had happened? But with this book, I did have ideas. I wouldn't have let it turn out the way it did. Well, maybe I am going to include a little spoiler section for everyone who has read the books, so that we can share opinions on this. So the spoiler will start now, and you can skip to a certain time in this video, which I will include here if you don't want to hear how this story ends. So in the end, it is a very happy ending, right? She finds a way to get rid of her advisor, she saves her lover, he comes back from the dead, and they get to go back into the world. I understand that this is probably a bit, a foray into lighter literature and, I don't know, second chances at a good life and things like that. Learning from your experiences, repenting, and then going on with life. But I would have done it differently. I thought that when she was taking this flower to King Yama, she was going to trade her life for her lover's life. So I would have liked to see her sacrificing herself for the resurrection of the person she loved, and then that would have been very tragic, but in a positive sense, because she as a character would have learned so much that she would self-sacrifice for her loved one. But at the same time, it would be tragic because they couldn't see each other again. That's how I would have ended the story. I would have left this whole confrontation with the advisor out of the situation, because at that point, before she met her professor again, all of the things that happened with their interaction, I already knew. So them meeting and having this conversation and her, liberating herself from his influence, I didn't need that kind of scene because I already knew all of this. The internal monologue that she had before, the conversations she had with Elspeth, and I don't know, with the other people she met who had experience with the professor, I already knew that she was, liberated and that his perspective wasn't important anymore. So I didn't need all of the confrontation with her and him, and it didn't feel like I was proud of her for standing up to him. It felt very, I don't know, not very impressive to me, because all of that was already clear to me. So it wasn't exciting, or I wasn't awestruck with how brave she was. This wasn't an act of bravery to me or of courage. It was an act of just continuing what I already knew, and I would have liked for the story to kind of veer away. I would have liked to let this book end without the professor even taking any shape. I think that would have been even more intriguing, because it would have shown even more how unimportant he was in the end. Yes, and then the other thing I said was that I would have traded her life for the lover's life, so that in the end she would not get to see, the earth again or be alive again, but he could, and he could continue, their work in her name, something like that, because he sacrificed himself for her, and she continued on without him and tried to be a better person for him. And I think it would have been very intriguing and like a full circle moment if in the end she learned so much as a character that she was able to save him and take the opportunity to give him back his life. But the trade-off then would have been that she cannot continue on, and she sacrifices herself. I think that would have been more intriguing. And yeah. Spoilers closed. I think overall this book was well done, in the sense that I understood what R.F. Kuang tried to do, right? Because she was taking this topic of paradoxes, things that can't be but are, and weaving a magic system out of that, which I think required a lot of research and knowledge. So that is very impressive. Same with Babel. Yes, but the other things I've already mentioned in my earlier clips while I was reading the book. Yeah, it won't be one that I will be holding dear for the next years, not like Babel is. But I also talked about this with my husband, and he was like, maybe because you are so into Babel and excited about it, and this is the third book you've read by her, maybe the fact that you are taking Babel as a reference always, the new book can't really do well, because you're always comparing it to a wonderful book that you really like. And I was like, yes, that may be true, but I can't change the fact that I've read these other books by her. I appreciate that she, was trying to do something different than the other books she's written in this dark academia sphere. But I just don't think it worked out so well for the reasons I've already mentioned. I think maybe this is a good starter book to foray into this genre of dark academia if you're not into very serious dark matters. I mean, she talks a lot about the scientific realm and what it takes to become a professor, and why you would take this kind of career, I guess. If you're interested in that, then I think it's okay, and it's also a dark topic. But other than that, yeah, maybe it's a beginner's book for Dark Academia. I'm not sure. I don't think I will be reading it again. I think I will want to read Babel again at a different point in time, but with Katabasis, yes, it's not as intriguing to me as the other books she's written. Still, I just want to be fair and tell you that it's been, you know, an okay journey. But I also thought about finishing it or stopping in the middle and taking up another book, and that's never a good sign. And I also wasn't happy about the ending. So yeah, take from that what you want. Maybe give it a try, maybe don't. I'm not sure. But I can just say yes. I'm now glad to move on to different reads. But this concludes my review and my vlog for reading Katabasis by Kuang. This was one of the books on my 25 to read in 2025 lists, and also on my autumn TBR. So I finished it now at the end of August, beginning of September. And yes, I guess I feel accomplished because I can check it off my list, but I don't feel accomplished like I do when I've read a very good book. So that's my opinion. I'm interested to hear what you think of the book and how your reading experience has gone on. Yesterday I went to a local book shop here in my hometown, and actually they have a book club meeting at the beginning of October, which discusses R.F. Kuang's Katabasis. So I might join them and see what other people think of this book. I love discussing this in person, but I'm also interested to hear what you think of the book. So maybe if you could tell me in the comments below, I'd be interested. And see you soon.